Alright, this is A24 giving us a medieval fantasy. I'll be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of A24, since most of the movies I've seen from them have bored me. But the trailers for this one looked really cool, so I decided to check it out. Please don't let me down. The Green Knight. So The Green Knight is based off an old 14th century poem, and it's an Arthurian tale about Sir Gawain, played by Dev Patel in this movie. He wants to prove himself as an honorable knight, so one Christmas, this creature named the Green Knight walks into this kingdom, and he says, "Does anybody dare to strike a blow at me? If you land a hit on me, I'll have to do the same thing to you 1 year from now." And so Sir Gawain, seeking honor, is like, "I'll do it." And so he lands a blow, and the Green Knight's like, "Alright, see you in a year." And then 1 year passes, and now Sir Gawain has to go to the Green Chapel to meet the Green Knight again. And now we have our movie. Now, the first thing I will say about this movie is that it is not for everyone. This is a pretty serious movie, so you can't watch it casually. There is little to no humor in it, so like you can't be in a relaxing mood and be like, "Alright, I'm just gonna casually put on the Green Knight." No, for this movie, you really gotta wanna sit down and invest your time in it. So I'm just letting you know that. Alright, Dev Patel is a great actor. He's proven this quite a few times, and we can forgive him for The Last Airbender, because that movie wasn't his fault. But he's always great as a main character to follow throughout a movie, because he does a good job at displaying a vulnerable side. He's horrified as he's going throughout his quest. Everything in this world wants to kill him, and I feel like he did react as a normal person would. Alicia Vikander's in this movie. She's also great. At first you're like, alright, she's just a love interest, and that's like the only role she serves. But then later on in the movie she pops up again, and you're like, oh, okay, Alicia Vikander's got some pretty good acting chops here. Because at one point she has this monologue, and I was like, holy shit, this chick. Because bear in mind, these actors have to speak all Old English-like, because this takes place in like the 14th century or something. And so sometimes when actors have to talk like that, you can tell they're trying, but it really feels like they're reciting a script. But in this movie, it was conveyed very well, because they spoke with emotion.
Indulge me in this game. I will meet thee.
When you speak with conviction, it doesn't really matter what kind of diction you're using. People will buy it, and that's why this movie's got some pretty good actors. Dev Patel, Alicia Vikander, Joel Edgerton's in this movie. His character was interesting. I'm not gonna say much about him because the trailers didn't show much about him, so I'll just say he was interesting, and leave it at that. Sean Harris plays the king though, and this guy's a really good actor too. He really feels like a king that is coming to the end of his time, and he makes this mission that Sir Gawain is going on feel like life and death. And you're like, whoa, alright dude, if you say so. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, I just love medieval fantasy. You know, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, and I realized that this movie gave me my medieval fantasy fix that I've been craving for a couple years. Really ever since the last season of Game of Thrones. Because since then, I don't feel like I've seen a good, memorable medieval fantasy. And so yeah, this world that this movie takes place in, we're talking, you know, oh, castles and knights and kings and queens and creatures. The design of everything just looks really cool. Hell, it's part of the reason I went to go see this movie in the first place. But then we come to the fact that this movie is really slow. And I think everyone who watches and reviews this movie is gonna say that, because there is no denying that. This movie, oh my goodness. Now, normally I prefer that a movie takes its time to tell its whole story, rather than, you know, rushing through it. But then the other side of that is that, take The Shining for example. I know people love that movie, but in my opinion, the movie is a little too slow, to the point of boring me. That's just my opinion. But with medieval fantasies, I prefer them to be this kind of slow in most cases. Because if a medieval fantasy takes its time and tells its whole story, then it feels like it's taking itself seriously. You know, it's not lighthearted at all. That's why I love Lord of the Rings, and those are 3 to 4 hour movies. So this movie, yes, it does feel slow, and I will be honest, I did check my watch a couple of times, because I could only put up with it being slow for so long, before I was like, alright, how long before I can go? But the other side of that is that some of these scenes are really interesting. Like there's a point in the movie where Aaron Kellyman shows up. That scene in the movie is probably one of the more interesting scenes in the entire thing. I just found it really cool, and it was really effective in showcasing some of the R-rated stuff in this movie. Yeah, this movie is rated R, and there are some pretty brutal things. I mean, it's not the most violent movie I've ever seen, but there's some subject matter where you're like, oh yeah, that would not be allowed in a PG-13 movie. It's pretty adult stuff. And of course, this being an A24 movie, it's gonna be very stylistic. There are points where I was like, the editing here is really strange. Like something will be going down and then it'll cut to somewhere else entirely, and it'll go like back and forth, and it's supposed to show this like artistic side of it. I've noticed that that's just what happens in indie movies. I'm not saying it's A24's fault, but I am saying that in a lot of A24 movies I've seen, there's a lot of weird stylistic editing choices. Like the end of this movie, I'm not gonna spoil anything of course, but there's this whole scene going on, there's like little to no dialogue dialogue, but it's sort of a mind trip. I was like, what is happening here? The movie wants you to leave thinking about its ending. You know, it's got layers. It wants you to be like, ooh, what does it all mean? But for me, it just felt kind of confusing. I don't know, I just don't normally buy into the whole artsy-fartsy side of Hollywood filmmaking. And at points, this does feel like a pretty artsy-fartsy film. I'd rather have a movie just be straightforward with me, like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. But that's just me. As for the score in this movie, it's pretty cool. It's really eerie, I gotta say. Like, there's some dissonant choirs going on when something suspenseful is happening, and it really helps to build up the tension. You're like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? It was never a big orchestra, you know? The music always felt really small and contained, which I thought was pretty cool. It gave another factor of uniqueness to this movie. Not bad at all. So in the end, The Green Knight, I actually thought was pretty cool. I don't feel the instant urge to watch it again, or maybe even ever again, but I don't regret seeing it at all. The movie takes itself very seriously. There's barely any humor in it, which I do appreciate. All the characters are acted very well. The dialogue is very well spoken. The visual effects are really good. I love the set design. I love the world of the medieval fantasy. Really, it's what's gonna hold me over until Amazon's Lord of the Rings series comes out, cause boy am I looking forward to that. But The Green Knight is very stylistic and very bizarre. Like I said, it's not for everyone. So if you're curious about seeing this movie, just know what you're getting into. For The Green Knight, I will say, go see this movie while it's in theaters. So, The Green Knight, have you seen it? What do you think about it? And what is your favorite medieval fantasy of all time? I'm curious about that one. Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.